That's good. I got it.
Okay. All right, so we are having some technical difficulties, so apologies if this video isn't working out. Nevertheless, I'm going to gavel in the City of Lake Forest Park City Council special meeting, Monday, November 24th, 2025 at 6 p.m. And I've asked Councilmember McCartney to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Everyone, please be seated. Okay, so I'm looking for someone to move the adoption of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. I'll just call for unanimous vote. Any objections? Any objections? Any objections? Okay, so by mutual consent, the adoption of the agenda is adopted. All right, so now I'm going to read this rather lengthy statement about our public comments. And if I guess oh, thanks. Okay. All right. The council will not be accepting online public comments. This portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council on agenda items or any other topic the council might have purview or control over. However, the mayor or the council may not respond to public comments. If the comments are of a nature that the council does not have influence or control over, then the mayor or presiding officer may request the speaker to suspend their comments. The council may direct staff to follow up on items brought up by the public. Comments are limited to a 3-minute time limit.
Thank you for giving me the time to get the hook for it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay. So we have Sarah Phillips. Welcome, Ms. Phillips.
My name is Sarah Phillips. I live in Lake Forest Park. And I wanted to thank you for your thoughtful consideration of the issues around hiring a climate manager. And I was thinking the other day when it's sort of what it's like to be in an accident, when you're in a car accident or you're falling and suddenly everything slows down and it feels like it's eternity before you get an impact. And I think sometimes that's how we think about climate, that it's slow and it feels like that. But really, in real life, the accident or the fall happens very quickly. And with climate, the slowness is an illusion. I was thinking about the heat dome in the paper the other day. It said, not only did 100 people die in Washington under the heat dome, that it's had a long-term effect on our forests, that the top of the forest apparently burned, and that there's retarded growth in those trees. Those are some of those long-term impacts that we're going to have on the environment. And that the other thing that people are talking about in various places is the impact on infrastructure. That if we're not planning now for climate, the impacts of climate, we're not preparing correctly, because infrastructural roads, overpasses, culverts will have a long-term impact on the climate. And when we're building a resilient community, the city has a role to play. We have the city has a role to play for shelter in heat and in smoke and cold. Those are places where we expect the city to provide leadership. And that if this is the climate manager is the way that the city can provide that leadership. And it's just part of what should be being done in the municipal area. That what we want to do is figure out how to reduce them, how the city can be a leader on reducing emissions, on preserving our environment and building resiliency. And the climate manager has a real role to play, and it's an asset to the community because the climate manager is an outward facing position, and it begins to get the cities doing good things for the residents in public on a regular basis. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Is there anyone else in the chamber who'd like to make a comment? Okay. All right. Oh,
Person did just walk in.
would the person who walked in like to make a comment?
We, on the spot. This is what we do. On Thursday.
Right, pretty much. Tradition. All right, come on up.
Oh, and my head's cut off. There we go. Hi. There we go. Oh, it's cool. Yeah, so my name is Marty Ross. I have to say my address. No, okay. Lake Forest Park, though. Yeah, off of 40th. But yeah, I just wanted to speak in support of hiring of the climate manager. I think it's well timed, and there's been a lot of good work done by volunteers in the community to help support the decision. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Okay, I guess at the risk of repeating last week, do any of the folks who are just coming in want to make a comment?
Hi. Did you already do it, Marty?
Hi again. Sally, 17868 40th Avenue Northeast. So I'm here today to encourage you to pay for the climate manager and to have a climate manager. I know the situations have changed from not having the monies from Prop 1, but if I was at home trying to figure out what am I going to say, and the way I understand it is when I think about my own family. And as parents, sometimes you have to make tough decisions. And as a community, you guys are like our parents. You make the decisions on behalf of what's best for us. Not necessarily what we want, but what's best for us. So it means you have to think of the future. If that means that you have to do something that is even unpopular. I mean, those of you who have kids, how many decisions do you have to make that are so unpopular from the kids' standpoint? But you know that you want to have money for their education, for their teeth, maybe tutors, maybe therapists, all these different things. You know what's coming ahead. We know what's coming ahead with this climate change. We can't defer it. Just because our community didn't pass a prop by 27 votes doesn't mean you take it away from something we need to be better prepared as a community for the future. Look at that, 1 minute, 26 seconds left. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yamasaki. All right. So anybody else want to make any kind of public comment?
I've already spoken. I'm definitely hoping that we will get approval for this position because so much work has already been done. All of this data is available. We know we need it. We could have kids selling lemonade on the streets if we get enough money to have somebody make those connections that are important to make this all happen. And you know, we all know that there's so little. We live on Lion and Hidden Creeks, and there's no salmon there that we have seen, or very little, if any. And we've had flooding, and it's just kind of, it's crazy. And I think we just need to step up and look at maybe the other models of how other cities have on the east side maybe have funded their programs, connecting with other charities or something to get it moving. But I hope we can move on it and make it all the work that's gone into it. I hate to see all that information just sit and not do its job. Thank you.
Oh, can you state your name for the record? Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Barnes. All right, so anybody else who in the chamber wants to give comment?
Hello, council. It's nice to see you. I just wanted to talk a little bit about a story that I heard on the news recently. Did you know that the iconic Mount Rainier is shrinking? This month, reports show that it has lost 20 feet in altitude. And so the glacial Columbia crest is no longer the highest point. Instead, a rocky outcrop on the southwest rim is now our new summit at elevation 14,399.6 feet. This also means that Mount Rainier is no longer one of the 5 peaks in the contiguous United States that has ice-covered summits year-round. So that's a big change. In fact, steady fossil fuel dependent warming caused by humans, let's be very clear about that, has increased temperatures at Mount Rainier 5.5 degrees Fahrenheit since 1955, causing this melting and shrinking on all 5 of our magnificent Washington glacial tops. To me, this is very distressing, depressing news. Mount Rainier's visible ice loss is a red flag indicator of the steady acceleration of climate impacts. Like Seattle and cities for miles around, a pride and joy of Lake Forest Park is the stunning view of Mount Rainier from across the lake. It's a beacon to enjoy from our town center, and it's the chosen center of our new Lake Forest Park Climate Hub that's gracing our commons walls. So, is this our problem? Mount Rainier is 60 miles away from us, and it's often covered with clouds anyway. Maybe we don't need to care about this. But to me, this problem shows the permanence of climate change, right? We often think of climate change as being something, oh, it'll pass. The smoke, it's going to pass. The fires will be done, we'll rebuild. It's all going to come back. But problems like Mount Rainier are going to be more and more and more common. And they're already getting to be so common that we as individuals cannot handle them ourselves. That's why we need governments to step up. That's why we need a climate manager for Lake Forest Park, and we need it as soon as possible, because these problems like Mount Rainier are not going to be going away after a certain amount of time. So I urge you to please consider spending the money on a climate manager. I think we need it right away. Thank you very much.
And will you state your name for the record?
I'm Dana Campbell, LFP resident.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Okay, is there, at the risk of summoning more people, are there anybody else in the chambers want to make a comment? Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead.
I will just add, we received 2 emails over the weekend. The first is from Ross Barslog Benson in support of hiring a climate manager. The second is from Tim O'Brien regarding school speed cameras.
Okay, so I'm wondering, I had heard that basically there were going to be people coming in, not on this particular topic, but some other topics. Was there any interest in the council to continue the public comment till 7 o'clock to allow some folks to come in if they've misunderstood the time?
Yeah, works for me.
Okay. All right. So we'll pick up public comment again at 7 o'clock. All right. Thanks, council. Let's move on. Sorry. All right. So we've got the meat of the meeting here now. Item 5, items for discussion, consideration, and or action. First up is the ordinance 25-1311, amending the 2025-26 biennial budget. And I understand, is there a staff presentation on this?
We weren't planning on a presentation this
Okay.
evening. You just received that on Thursday night.
Then we'll just go right into the discussion. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we'll go right into the discussion then. As you see from the agenda, we have several bullet pointed items. Let's just go in order unless somebody wants to prioritize one over another. Okay, all right, so apropos, hiring a climate coordinator / the job description. So I can take that second thing. So with your permission, I'll do that part of the presentation first, and then we can discuss the whole inclusion in the budget or not. Right, so if I can get Mr. McLean to cue it up. And just to give a bit of a preface, the presentation is going to be about the duties and the skills of this position to give us a better idea of, if we were to move forward with the hiring, what would this person literally do, and what would they bring to the city? So I'm hoping that through my slides, we can have a discussion of whether these are appropriate and if there are going to be changes that you see. Oh, sorry. Okay. Is that because can you hear me better now? Sorry about that. All right. So just to reiterate, the presentation is going to be about the skills and the duties of the position so that we can discuss amongst ourselves whether they are appropriate and what do we see as the vision of this position. So, and then we'll go into whether we're going to include it in the budget amendment or not. Okay, so here we go. Thanks. If you can go to the next slide. All right, so we look at, several folks looked at different, thank you. Okay, several folks looked at the different cities and counties that have a climate manager type position. And so here are some of the comparables. In fact, the slide actually shows an image of a job opening at King County. This is a climate coordinator position. So the point is that this is not a unique thing to Lake Forest Park by any means. And there's slightly different names for them, but when we were looking at the job duties and job skills, they all seem to have about the same, which meant that they were roughly going to be doing the same kinds of things. Okay, so make sure I can do this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so first off, what's the difference between a climate manager versus a climate coordinator? And I'm very thankful to HR Director Moore for this. The climate manager has slightly higher level responsibilities than a climate coordinator does. Broadly speaking, that means the climate manager would make more money than the climate coordinator does. Climate managers generally in charge of other people or have direct reports, whereas a climate coordinator doesn't necessarily have that. And my view on this is that I'm happy to have either of these two positions. One of the things that I'm really looking forward to is, of course, once we figure out our fiscal issues here, is that we have the capability, if we wanted to have a two-person department as opposed to just one person working on this very important topic, that we have room to basically place this other person at an appropriate level. So that's why I'm okay with either one, because either one would allow us to do that. So specifically, the thing that I see in the climate manager that I'd like to see in the whatever position we have is that strategy part, where the development, the implementation, and the overseeing over these overarching strategies that we have mentioned in our climate action plan are actually going to be carried forth. And I think that's really vital now that we have disbanded the Climate Action Committee. So we'll literally have this person doing it. Now, this person may ask that there be citizen committees set up, but that's going to take some time. So this person's going to be our show for quite some time. So that's one of the reasons why I think having that particular duty would be useful. And do you want to chime in, or do you want me to finish this first? What's your pleasure? Go ahead.
Is that role going to have their own budget in order to do anything? Because I think that we've talked about that, but there doesn't seem to be a budget assigned or a placeholder for that.
Exactly. And I think part of it is because of the one of the roles here. Actually, is it here? No, it's not here. But one of the roles that I see, as you'll see in one of the future slides, is the ability to write grants. So in order to basically have the budget, I'm suggesting this be, in a sense, self-support, not because you can't write really a budget or can't write a grant to support your salary, but you can certainly write a grant to support your work. So that's one of the things I see on this particular one. So whether or not we choose to give the position a little seed money to start off with, that's a completely different question. But it will be certainly less money than basically say a $500,000 climate element grant like we got from the state. Okay, anything else?
As long as we're doing the discussion, having a climate manager right now, it might pull from a different kind of group of folks who aren't haven't as recently actually done like the boots on the ground work. I mean, it just depends on who we get, but sometimes they want to be a manager and they want to manage a department. I'm hesitant to go into a two-person department. We don't have the funding for that. So for me, it makes some sense to start at the coordinator level with kind of a blended strategy option between the climate action plan, perhaps another community based task force or commission to bring that strategy to the forefront. But I think we want someone who's going to be more implementation at this stage. I guess because of the lack of funding to have both.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Regardless of whether it is a manager or a coordinator, would either of those be within the community development department under the direction of our community development director?
I'm going to defer to Administrator Hill on this.
The answer to your question, Councilmember, is yes. That seems to be the best fit. Director Hoffman has overseen all of that work, and so that's where we would place that person. Given constraints, that person will not sit in that department. They will be somewhere else in City Hall, but they will work for Director Hoffman.
Thank you.
Great. Good question. All right. Anyone else? Moving on then. Maybe I'm not aiming it. There we go. Sorry. All right. So what is the value of this position to the city? And I've got a few bullet points here. I think to me, the principal one is that it basically reduces risk and protects city infrastructure. As we've heard from some of the public comment, there are massive storms, there are potentials for wildfire, smoke, all this kind of stuff that is going to be in our future. And we don't really have somebody in charge of that right now in terms of how the city would respond to it. So I'm really looking forward to having someone that we can turn to that can coordinate with, for instance, NEMCO and other outside agencies on a more regional strategy for this. And right now, we just don't have that person. So it also basically holds us accountable for our climate action plan that we adopted, right? We have basically some benchmarks that are written in the plan, and do we actually live up to those? Right now, we have sort of a catch as catch can effort on that. It's not really any particular department head's responsibility to do that. So if that information turns up, that's great. It may not turn up. So having one person that can speak to these goals, I think is super important. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. What do you think the value of this position would be?
Talking salary.
Oh, no, not the salary, just literally what would be the what do you see that this would be the value added to the city? What would they bring?
I would say, as it was very eloquently said by all the folks during public comment, is probably the biggest emphasis would be to not lose ground on the climate action plan, like you had mentioned. And so I'm wondering if maybe that coordinator role, to your point about having somebody that is going to take action about a plan that's already, that strategy's kind of framework, maybe that would do well. But I see the plan execution being top priority and value.
And I'll echo that. Our current staff is stretched fairly thin. And so while they can occasionally think about climate actions, they have lots of other duties in terms of land use and zoning and fiscal things. And so this would be a person whose their sole job duty is to think about the climate in Lake Forest Park every day of the week. And so it would allow the work to get done on a full-time basis.
So I'll go with Councilmember Riddle, then Councilmember Good.
So I think reducing risk is a big one, but that's like the long-term goal. Short term, I think, is to be that implementer, as Councilman McCartney mentioned, of the climate action plan, but also to be a data gatherer, to start having somebody whose focus is checking that data and making sure that we're tracking. And that might be related to construction projects and just ensuring that we're getting the amount of recycled material out of projects and things like that, which kind of a varied level of services. But so that's kind of where I see this person holding us accountable to our climate action plan and actually finding opportunities in all our projects and all our work to add that climate resilience element.
I'd really like to see a citizen group be formed to accompany the role of the climate manager because it's a large job for one person. And if there can't be more staff, I think being complemented by a group of citizens that can communicate outwardly to other residents about some of the things that are going on would be very instrumental for that role.
Thank you for your comment. Councilmember Lebo? Okay. All right, so I'm going to read at this point a comment from Councilmember Saunders, who couldn't be here tonight. Oh, Jesus. Okay, there we go. All right, so it's a sort of long comment, so I'll try to pause. Okay, see, even within a tight budget, hiring a climate manager can generate real financial returns for a small city. Here's how this role can pay for itself and then some. It accesses outside funding is often the most immediate benefit. The climate manager can pursue federal and state grants that cities without dedicated staff simply miss. Programs through the EPA, DOE, FEMA, and the Inflation Reduction Act offer substantial funding for resilience projects, energy retrofits, and infrastructure upgrades. Many of these grants require applications that are too time intensive for already stretched staff to compete. A dedicated person focused on this can bring in multiples of their salary and grant funding within the first year or less. Reducing operational costs is another avenue. A climate manager can audit municipal buildings, streetlights, and vehicle fleets. It's not so much streetlights in our case, to identify energy waste. LED streetlight conversions, building weatherization, and optimized HVAC systems often produce savings of 15 to 30% on energy bills. These operational savings compound year after year. Avoiding future costs matters too. Climate-related disasters, floods, extreme heat, storms are increasingly expensive. Proactive planning around stormwater management, tree canopy expansion, and infrastructure hardening can prevent costly emergency repairs and reduce insurance premiums. FEMA studies suggest that every dollar spent on mitigation saves $6 in future disaster costs. And then finally, coordinating across departments can also produce efficiencies. A climate manager can help public works, planning, and finance departments align on projects, avoiding duplicating efforts and ensuring infrastructure investments serve multiple goals at once. So thank you, Councilmember Saunders. All right. So move on that. Okay. All right. So the qualifications to this position requires, we saw the manager versus coordinator. There's a bit of a difference in the expertise necessary. So I think though at a minimum, a bachelor's degree in environmental science, public policy, sustainability, energy studies, or public administration should be there. I don't know if you agree with 4 years of experience. I think on the other slide it said 2 to 3 years, but having experience of some kind in these fields is vital. Plus, the bottom bullet points have to do with specific roles that the position would fulfill. And I'm really excited by that third bullet point of experience with grant writing, administration, and reporting, since that's going to be crucial for this position. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Councilmember Good.
I would like to see a mandatory experience of grant writing over supervisory skills because I think that is more useful to the city at this time.
It's
Not
fair.
that couldn't change, but right now.
It's fair. Anyone else?
I'm noodling over the sort of the varied areas of the degree that we are asking for. We don't offer a work experience in lieu of, and that may be useful because this climate resilience process, while we've been talking about it for a long time, it actually like gearing up and being a program in the universities and things like that is fairly new. So if someone may not have had that opportunity when they were going through and getting their degree. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on offering equivalent field years of experience.
Yeah, I think if you, on all the council members' tables, and I don't know if this is in the agenda packet, but we do have the Lake Forest Park potential job description for the climate coordinator. Yep. Oh, it's on page 23. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So under qualifications and under education and training, it says required 2 years of college level coursework in ecology, environmental science, education, communications, and related field, and at least 2 years of emissions reductions programs, solid waste recycling administration, or sustainability related public outreach or equivalent education and experience. So I think that kind of honors what you're saying.
Guess I just don't know. Just some of these fields are so new.
Mhm.
Again, if someone had their degree 10, 15 years ago, but they may have equivalent education, non-degree programs, and I guess, it says college level coursework, but I really don't know what that means. And maybe that's just me not having looked for a job for a while.
Oh, sorry, Councilman, we're good. Or-
What about replacing the word and with or? In the first paragraph under required, I'm
Right,
sorry.
so we're looking at this now, right?
Yes, under the resume.
Great.
And it says what you were reading, so it says 2 years college level coursework in ecology, environmental science, education, communications, or related field. And right now it says, and at least 2 years of emissions reductions program, solid waste recycling administration, or sustainability related public outreach.
Hmm.
And so I'm suggesting that we move and to or, and then we're in that same paragraph where it has or, just put a comma.
Right.
Because then that opens up the field to a wider variety of candidates.
No, sorry. Yeah, Administrator Hill.
So I just wanted to make a point. The action for council tonight, and not formal action, just head nod, is this a position you would like to see? We can work with the HR director and reach out to other cities to get the specificity you'd like to see in the job description.
Mhm.
I don't think that's an exercise that you need to go through tonight. Director Moore is here, and I think she's heard this discussion. So we can work on that, but
Okay.
for focus on
Okay.
the actual
So,
question.
so we're getting a little too down into the
Yes.
weeds. Gotcha. Okay.
Good at
All
that.
right. All right. Well, then I'll finish. Go ahead.
I will just reiterate, I think we've heard here that we want to lift up the grant writing to
Right.
not optional, but to more of a required state.
Right.
We agree that's a role that we really want
agree.
that person to.
So we're talking about that preferred qualification on the actual LFP description of grants administration experience and lift that up to not preferred, but required.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so.
Fair. Okay, and so the duties, which are fallout from the value that the position brings, are these 6 points. And I think, yeah, by basically making that preferred qualification a required one, it makes that managed consultants and projects a lot more, was it doable, I guess? Yeah. But yeah, I think the other thing that I really want to see is you see a couple of opportunities here with this position. You can actually look at the city as a holistic organism almost. What are the different parts that climate touches them, and all of them do. And being able to align the efforts is a very valuable thing. But at the same time, also reaching out to the other cities that are in the area and making sure that, if there's a regional grant available or even a federal grant available, I think that's really great to have somebody with their ear to the ground and being able to work on that too. So that's really what I reiterate why I think this position has a lot of value. Okay. Any things that you see here that the duties that are missing or you don't want on here?
I think I think this is the most succinct sort of piece of what I thought that this person would do. And I think I agree with these 6. I just think when we come to manage consultants and projects that there's, how much of that is in-house versus overseeing the consultants that are doing it out of house, but I think we can work on project by project basis on that. I think all the other questions you're asking kind of balloon from this list. I agree with this list.
Anyone else? All right, well, thanks for the head nod on the duties then. So I think that's it for my part. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, so I guess now is the question of the position itself. Should we include it in the budget? And of course, I'm gonna open it up to everyone to comment on this. So does anyone want to start us off on the comment? Go ahead.
I just want to reiterate and remind my colleagues that we did have the solid waste utility tax. It has collected to date 217,000, and that the climate coordinator estimated salary plus benefits is around 151, give or take. So from that standpoint, the bucket that we had sort of earmarked for this can handle it. So I just wanted to make sure that wasn't a concern of anyone on the dais.
So where I'm at, in thinking about the budget, with Prop 1 not passing, we do have to be mindful of our budget. And the two things I'm looking for in really any operations are either number one, that it is serving a core function of the city, or number two, that it has a designated funding stream. And this position, as Councilmember Riddle said, we, as a council last year, when we adopted our budget, we implemented the solid waste fee. And so we have been earmarking money for this position. And I believe that the appropriate thing to do is to then use the money that we have collected to hire the position that last year we said we were going to do. So I am in support of amending the budget to include the climate manager or coordinator.
Anyone else? All right. I'll step in here then. And one of the things I wanted to mention about this was literally that the Climate Action Committee could have made any number of principal recommendations. They could have said, switch over to electric completely or fund an EV a charging station or whatever. They didn't. They said hire a climate manager. And so I think that speaks volumes to the fact that it is critical for the city to have one person who's responsible for these kinds of things. And as a couple of council members have already pointed out, that was one of the reasons why we had that proviso in the last year's budget to basically fund this position through that solid waste utility tax. And it has collected the money that we thought it would collect, and we can afford this. So in some sense, it's isolated from whatever happened to Prop 1. I mean, it really is the case where this one was set up well in advance, and I think we need to carry forth with it.
I would just add that I am not hear me. I'm not by any means a climate expert, but I would look to those who are and those who've put their time into this and reached out to the citizens and the residents to see, what it is we want to achieve. And ultimately, as you just shared, the recommendation is to hire this. And so I'm inclined to follow that, certainly. With regard to the budget and potential concerns and some of that things that you outlined between the position differences, I would be leaning more towards a coordinator, but I am in support of having this move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, we planned ahead on this one. One of the few things we were able to do through this proviso process. So I think it's time for us to fulfill our goal and hire a climate coordinator.
Okay. Before take your comment, anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
I'll just speak for Councilmember Saunders. Thank you for reading the letter that she wrote for you. But she spoke very favorably about hiring the climate manager. So I believe she does seem to be strongly in support of this.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. All right, does staff have enough of a nod here? Okay, great. Okay, so moving on to the next one then, hiring of additional staff for the Human Resources Department. And as you might recall, this was, I think Director Moore did a great job of explaining to us the necessity for having another position in that department. So does anybody have any comments about that?
I say we give her all the help she needs. I'm in support.
I'm in support as well. She's run as a one-person department for long enough.
Mhm. Yep. Having some professional insight to some of the things that I'm sure you juggle, the fact that you've held this down on your own for as long as you have is amazing. And I would be very much in support of hiring additional.
I have a question for Finance Director Vaughn. So last year, when we were adopted the budget, we were essentially deciding between hiring an additional HR staff member versus not. We're in a slightly different place now where, because of the intense workload, we are currently hiring a temporary staffer through an agency. And so I was hoping you could speak to the financial difference between continuing with a temporary staff member versus hiring our own HR
Yep.
staff member.
Definitely. Thank you, Vice Chair. So yes, we did build into the budget in the original proposal for the amendment, the mid-buy, a value of at a 0.8 FTE, and comparing that to what we have been spending, it isn't currently, we aren't using it as a 0.0 FTE, less than that, just to keep us afloat. But there are some differences here. So we compared using the hourly salary that we're currently paying for that temporary HR support to calculate it out. And internally, we do need to revise the number for the next meeting for the salary portion. It's down a little bit with the 0.8 FTE portion. So the number does need to be corrected on that schedule of adjustments to 82,500, which puts the total amount of the salaries and benefits, if we did it and hired somebody internally, to 122,500. I won't make you do the math. I'll just tell you the numbers. And then if we do, if the city evaluates hiring, and I just have the point in time, the employee that we're using currently to date, her hourly rate, again, trying to compare apples to apples with the 0.8. However, what we do know now that the B&O tax has been updated, that position now will be charged sales tax. So I did add that in. So that alone at 0.8 is estimated around 107,000 if we did it temporarily through a temp agency. And so I think that opens a bigger conversation internally of what the city, and I'll stop talking.
Thank you for that information.
To clarify, I think you've mentioned this before, but the temp individual can change based off of who has availability from the temp agency. So there is a distinct lack of continuity and retraining that occurs with the current temp process. Is that correct?
It does have the possibility to do so. Yes, that's the challenge of a temporary agency or a temp employee is it has the potential to be very temporary.
Thank you.
And hopefully they like us and hopefully they stay. And if that's not the case, then it becomes another challenge.
Councilmember Good?
Okay, just so for clarification, then say we start out in January, just for the sake of the conversation. So you're saying if we continue on with the temp person, it's 122,500 annually. And then if it's a direct hire, it's 82,500.
So the 122 is adding in benefits. So if the city does bring a full-time employee in at a 0.8 FTE, that position would qualify for benefits. So having a vacant position, I will just very openly state it for budgeting purposes, we have to budget them what we would define as fully loaded, and I will explain that. So fully loaded means that we have to basically estimate that their healthcare costs, they're going to do a full family. That could not be the case. Once that employee is hired, they might not be supporting a full family, but we have to estimate and budget that way. So it could vary. The benefits could vary per se.
But I'm trying to get the difference between what a temp person cost annually as opposed to one that's a direct hire fully loaded.
So currently the temp would be about 107,000.
Okay. Got it. That's
And then internally with salaries and benefits, with the proposal of the salary range that we have on the Exhibit A, that is a total of the 122,500. And the 82,000 I was highlighting as a revision that needs to be on that schedule of adjustments. So I apologize for that confusion. But we will update it and put it out as the salary portion is 82,500.
okay. Thanks.
Vice Chair?
Yeah, I'm supportive of this. Compared to our current status quo, this would be approximately $15,000 additional to the budget. But what it would get us is continuity, that we would have control over who we're hiring. They would be our employee. There would be long-term benefits in terms of their integration with other departments in the city, with the goals of the city. And so I think those add value. It's hard to put a dollar amount on those, but they do add substantial value to hiring our own person internally. So I'm supportive of that.
Councilmember Lebo?
Thank you. I'm supportive of the adding monies to the budget to address the need that has been described by the city administration for additional HR support. I, though, would personally leave it to the city administration to decide whether they want permanent or part-time and whether they need 8/10 or 5/10. So I think there's been a demonstration for the additional need for HR, but I would leave it to the administration to determine how best to fill that position based upon the funding that's requested.
Councilmember Riddle?
Try not to get into the weeds, pardon me.
No, thank you. I agree. We're hearing the different options, but that is the administration's purview as to which option they go with. We just need to give you a budget and some expectations. And I think going with the 122,500 fully loaded gives you all the options, hiring in at a lower level, doing a temp, that gives the flexibility to the administration to be able to find the right fit. So I support that for the budget.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Enough of a head nod? Great. Okay, so Director Vaughn, if I could have you stay there because I'm going to mess this up for sure. Department restructuring for the municipal court. This is about fixing a previous oversight, correct?
It's probably, I don't know about fixing a previous oversight. It's becoming more accurate moving forward.
Okay.
Let's phrase it that way. So I think the need has existed and but now we're just getting kind of evaluating other court systems. There's just a structure that's needed within the court system that our current salary schedule doesn't tee up to have a tiered system, being your court administrator. Then you have a senior judicial specialist, which is a higher level supporting the courtroom, supporting higher level needs that the court needs to function, versus a court clerk, or currently called a court clerk, proposed to be stated as a judicial specialist, meaning that they're the ones answering the phones and doing cash receipting, deposits to the bank. There is truly a tiered system there. And what the city is looking to do for the court is make that correct for the system that is already kind of in place, but now give the judicial specialist, a senior judicial specialist, and the court administrator that tiered structure to be able to hire within that tiered structure. So if the city does find somebody that is more qualified, they would bring them in as a senior judicial specialist, which would be more appropriate and paying them in line with the duties that they're actually able to perform. Because one of the challenges internally right now is that there's only actually one court clerk that has the ability in order to support the courtroom outside of our court administrator, which is not ideal. So,
Thank you for that. All right, so does council have any comment on this one? Go ahead. So I'll go with Council or Vice Chair Goldman and then Councilmember Riddle.
Echoing our previous discussion, staff is in the best position to know what is needed to manage the city. It seems like if the staff feels this would be a reasonable change to have judicial specialists rather than court clerks, I'm not going to second guess that advice.
Thank you. And in the approved salary schedule, we do have those positions updated.
yes, they're
And there
currently
are-
being proposed.
And then there are FTEs attached to those. And that's current status. Is that what I'm looking at?
Actually, that is adding a 0.5 in there, I believe. Isn't that correct, Shannon? I'm sorry, HR Director Moore?
Currently have 4.5 FTE that they can use. We have 3 staff that are currently hired. The 0.5 extra is through that tiered system that the budget was approved with. So they haven't filled or posted for that 0.5 because they would like to hold on to that to see if they can reclassify that through this budget process as a senior judicial specialist if possible. So it's a reclassification of already approved FTE from the prior budget.
So the salary schedule dollars that are for these 2 positions, have those changed? Is there an overall budget impact other than the adding of the 0.5 FTE?
So we do have to adjust or strongly recommend, please, that we adjust the judicial specialist for market because we are out of range there. And then the senior judicial specialist does adjust along with that to make sure that we don't have the compression issues between those 2 positions. I think also it would allow us to hire with experience. For example, the last 2 offers we've put out with experience, they have both declined because I think we just don't pay enough. And so we're trying to support the need that way with our experience.
Okay. Yeah.
Hires.
And just a point of clarification on that, the difference between the judicial specialist and the senior is about $10,000 a year.
Yeah. So, but what I'm seeing and what we approved last week is the non-market adjusted values, or is that the market adjusted values? And you can go look at it if you.
So I don't know if you guys approved anything on the budget yet for the adjust. Yes. So there's still the question about, can you adjust for market? And that is in addition to the COLA that was already approved. And then the secondary question of reclassifying FTE for the senior judicial specialist. Ideally, and I think court will maybe speak to this at another meeting about the need for that additional FTE at the beginning of the year versus waiting a little bit further along based on their needs. But I'm not trying to broach that subject right now, just to say that we're trying to reclassify that current FTE.
I guess I just want to get a yes or no that what was in there was pre-market adjustment. That would be a current, or is that?
What you're seeing in
think
there
that-
does have the market and the COLA.
Okay,
that-
thank you.
Sorry.
That's just so
Yeah.
I know whether it's going to change or not. Okay.
Yes, sorry. So if it is approved with the market adjustment plus the COLA that was already approved, what you're seeing in front of you is the actual dollars
Thank you.
associated with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
All right, appreciate your answer. Anybody else want to speak on this? Go ahead, Councilmember Good.
I'm in support of the reclassification.
Just had the one question, which is and this might be for a future, so just shut me down if that's the case. Is the 0.5 FTE going to be paid out of the 002 traffic fund?
It's a it's a hybrid. The additional, all of the FTEs are paid out of both.
Okay.
So when we hire additional FTEs, there is a cost allocation split. So the appropriate amount is paid for out of the general fund and the appropriate amount is out of the 002 fund, which is driving the need up for an additional FTEs.
Right. So as we had kind of decided a while
It's a
back.
split.
Yeah. Councilmember Lebo.
Thank you. I'm fine with this request.
Okay. Thank you. Administrator Hill, you have enough of a head on? Great, perfect. Okay. All right. So now, something a little bit more fun, pickleball. All right. So, as y'all know, we got a request from the pickleball community for $25,000 additional to enhance both Lake Forest Park Elementary's pickleball court as well as Horizon Views. And so I want to hear your views on that.
Well,
Doesn't
I
hurt.
think for equity's sake, we need to wait at least 10 years because the tennis people did. No, I can see the need, and I can see that it is a very popular sport at the moment. I'm not 100% sure what that cost would be, so I'm not ready to commit to a yes or no. I'd like to have a sense of the implication of it. We haven't really done any studies to understand where's the power coming from. Like, I just don't know yet.
And anyone else? Councilmember Lebo.
Yeah, so I'd like to speak in favor of this. I think these are improvements that would benefit the public. There's a great demand for it. I think there are also modest improvements considering that the citizens and public have already raised over $22,000 for improvements, which I think are just improvements that we would have for our parks in general. And so to single them out to say they have to raise money for nets to play pickleball, I don't think is reasonable. As for the total amount, I think $25,000 is a reasonable amount, and that we could study this for a long time, and it could certainly cost more than that. But I think that there are ways that we can move forward with this. With the goal in mind of windscreen and benches at Horizon View and an LED lighting retrofit at Lake Forest Park with benches. I think consideration should also be given to if it's possible to have a portable toilet at Lake Forest Park. I don't know how that interacts with the school district, but if there's an opportunity, I think we just move forward. Hate to use trademarks or other logos, but sometimes just doing it is the best course of action.
I too had, and maybe this is for the group or we just put this to a side, but I know they had talked about the porta potties and I just was wondering what the implications were with that. But separate is, I was impressed that they did raise $22,000. I think that shows dedication and it is impressive. I think that their asks are pretty reasonable. And to Mr. Lebo's point about it being a public, it's going to serve our public and the parks, I would be in favor of it as well.
Yeah, one bit of information that was given to me by a couple of the people who came and spoke to us last time at public comment was that there's at least 100 at each court. So that's a fairly large number of people. So I'm very much in favor of it. So, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I hate to dissent on this one. I really appreciate the passion of the players, the members of the public, and the amount of money they've raised. What I come back to is what I said earlier, that focusing on either things that allow the city to perform core services or where we've already earmarked money. And while these improvements would certainly be nice, and we certainly should do them in the long term, I don't think it rises to either of those levels. And so at this time, considering our overall budget situation, I would not be in favor with doing it this coming year.
Okay. Thank you for your thought. Anyone else? Councilmember Good.
I'm in support of it because anything that gets our kids out from screens is a very positive thing. It's for health, it's for their well-being. I'm in support of it.
Okay, so I guess we'll have to all right, I guess the default here then is to include it in the budget amendment, and then we can
Take the
vote
vote.
against it if, okay, gotcha. All right, so I think that's going to be our course of action here. So we'll have a more formal vote on December 11th. Do we have somebody with a hand up? Yep. All right, so moving on to the using the budget stabilization / council contingency fund. So as you recall, we had this discussion of whether the shortfall for next year should be paid out of the unallocated general fund balance, or it should be that the budget stabilization / council contingency funds should be used. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
I
So
might
we're
as well
good.
jump right in. I'm in favor of using the budget stabilization fund because because that's what it's for on that particular item, and that would possibly allow for funds to come out of that we want, if we want to do pickleball parks improvement or a senior center request, then that could possibly come out of the other fund.
Councilmember Riddles.
I'm leaning towards no, let's not complicate things right now, because I think we all know that we have a discussion, a greater discussion about the unallocated savings funds. And more than likely, our discussion is going to go, some of those have to go into a stabilization budget, a budget stabilization fund. And so we're just going to be moving money back in, or we're going to be rethinking how we're doing our stabilization process. So just to keep things clean and simple and not have to do any more work on this that's just going to get undone, I suggest we just use the unallocated funds, and then we have that discussion about, okay, going forward, what's the right way for us to be managing this?
Anyone else? Councilmember Lebo?
So as you recall, I brought this subject up and I'm still in support of it. There was a discussion about whether or not the council contingency would be appropriate. And I think the administration has outlined several reasons why that might not be the best course, but I would be in favor of using the fiscal sustainability fund, stabilization fund, pardon me.
And Administrator Hill, you had a thought.
So I just wanted to point you to page 8 of the packet and realize that there's about $978,000 in difference there for the general fund to balance that. You'll later be taking up senior center request for about 25,000. So you're looking at about $1 million swing. Your budget stabilization fund is at 373,261.40 cents. And so if you want to do it all there, you will need to move money out of unallocated general fund balance into the budget stabilization, to Councilmember Lebo's point, for that transparency of that's where that money is flowing. But currently there's not enough in that line to cover the difference.
For Councilmember Lebo, is there anybody else who hasn't commented yet? Okay, Vice Chair.
I was going to make a similar point to Councilmember Riddle and Administrator Hill, that the budget stabilization fund doesn't have enough money, and it feels overcomplicated to move money from the general fund into the stabilization fund to effectively then pay general fund expenses. I do think next year we should have a broader council discussion about the role of both of those funds, the budget stabilization and the council contingency funds. But it just feels overly complicated to just shift money back and forth and back when it's all really part of the general fund. So I would support just this year, just keep it simple, pay it out of the general fund and an allocated portion. And then next year, let's have that deeper discussion.
Councilmember Lebo?
So I would offer as a suggestion that we just draw down the budget stabilization fund, and then the remainder comes out of the unallocated general fund, so that you're not passing monies through the budget stabilization fund, but rather just draw it down as you would any other contingency. And once you exceed the contingency, then you go to your other source if you have it. So I'm not proposing that we move money into the from the general fund, unallocated fund, to the budget stabilization fund, into the general fund. Right. But rather just draw down what we have, and then the remainder comes out of the unallocated.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, my personal feeling about this is I hate it when I complicate a process. And so just drawing out of the unallocated general fund for basically our budget shortfall seems to be the prudent course of action. We'd have to do another resolution in order to draw down, I believe, the budget stabilization fund.
No, you do not. Not for budget stabilization. That's only
Okay.
council contingency.
So we need the resolution to fill the budget stabilization fund then. Okay, we don't need that either. Okay. Okay, okay. All right. So maybe I'm overcomplicating it in my mind. All right. So that could very well be. But my point is that basically, yeah, I think to account the Vice Chair Goldman's point, we really do need to have a much needed discussion on clarity on this. My impression about the Budget Stabilization Fund was the COVID shutdown. So in March 2020, when we all had to go work at home and everything shut down, that was a true emergency because we still had to pay all the folks at the city, and yet we were not bringing in very much revenue. And that, seemed like a time you need to stabilize your budget. Mid-buy adjustment doesn't strike me as a particularly emergency situation, even though we have a shortfall. So that's one of the reasons I didn't want to overcomplicate the thing. But all right, so I need to get some clarity here then. Should we include drawing down the budget stabilization fund or should we not? We need to do sort of a head nod here.
I think we should.
I'm sorry. Are you asking for a head nod or a vote?
A head nod, yeah, not a vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there you go. Do you have enough? Yeah.
Like, the best course of action, discussions, motions.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to create the extra work, but thank you for doing that. Yeah. Vice Chair Goldman.
If I could ask one more question, does the administration have a preference or a recommendation as to what they feel is the more prudent course of action?
Council, they are both general fund, budget stabilization. At the end of the year, it all rolls together. But for transparency, Lego's point, it is seen differently in this format as opposed to consolidating financials.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Administrator Hill. All right. Okay, so and then the final one is the senior center request. As you may recall, this is basically for paying for the social worker. And the argument was made that since the city of Shoreline is already supporting this position, that we pay our fair share, which works out to be something like 25,000, right?
That's 4750 of new money.
Oh, 46, sorry, my overestimate, 4750. Thank you, Vice Chair. So thoughts?
I'm just clarifying for me. Thank you. That's 4,750 or is that 47,000?
4,750.
Sorry.
Or is it 4750
No,
cents?
No, it's 4,700.
Thank you for the clarity.
All right, Councilmember Riddle.
And I had a lovely conversation with the senior center director and suggested that she bring this to the mid-buy because I think it was unclear when we were doing the biennial budget that mental health professional was going to be restricted to Shoreline, it was such a new program and she was new to the senior center. So I really do support this a lot. They are seeing a need coming from LFP. And again, these sorts of financial support are validated by data from our partners so that it does have to be justified as truly they are serving our community. So I will put as much money in there to serve these seniors mental health as possible. It is a very difficult thing to go through when you're a senior and you have a need, and it's really hard to find services. So if they're asking for 4750 or whatever it is, I am wholeheartedly behind it.
All right, anyone else? Councilmember Good?
I'm in support of it. We're such a small city and they take the greater share of the burden of providing these services and a place for people to go. And I think that's almost an insignificant amount to provide for what you get for the value.
Councilmember Lebo?
I also am supportive of the request in the amount of 4750.
Thank you for that. All right, Councilmember McCartney.
I'm very much in support of this as well.
Vice Chair?
I'm also, actually, Administrator Hill, did you have a clarification to make or?
I just want to clarify an earlier statement when I said the total is $25,000, just for the record. they have asked to move 20,000 of their existing dollars within the budget, something that we can do administratively. So that was the 25,000. I just, for the record, didn't want that to show up as 25,000. Request is, as Councilmember Lebo has suggested.
Actually, if I could clarify, the email you sent us said 4,000 of the 35 be reallocated. So 4,000 plus of reallocated plus 4,750 of new money.
Then I'll quit talking. Thank you.
Something that jumped out at me is, in general, it's the Shoreline Lake Forest Park Senior Center. And those services seem to be fairly agnostic to which of those two cities you're from. That if you need a meal, you want to attend a meal or some other yoga or something like that. This is one of the few services where they actually ask you what city you're from. And if you say Lake Forest Park, they say, sorry, you can't do this. So I think as a matter of fairness for our seniors, I do think it's a core service that we should facilitate.
And I will reiterate, I also think of this service as a core service that a city should be providing.
And I appreciate everybody's comments. I know that community partners is one of those places in a tight budget year that we often look to cut, but I don't think this is one of those things that we ought to cut. So I'm very much in favor of this. So anybody else? Administrator Hill, enough of a head nod? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so just to go back to one piece of business we have outstanding, since it's now 7:13 and nobody else has shown up in the chambers who hasn't already given a comment, I'm going to close public comment. All right. And I think the city parking requirements, which is our last item, as Vice Chair.
Point of order.
Oh, go ahead.
Is there an opportunity to have any other discussion on the budget at this time, or do we need to wait till December 11th?
I believe we need to wait until December 11th because this is a special meeting and we cannot alter the agenda, as I recall.
But the agenda is for discussion of the budget.
Yeah, as a point of order, I actually would ask our city attorney, is that bullet list, is that the exclusive items we can discuss, or is it including but not limited to those 6 bullet points?
The agenda lists ordinance 251311. And then it says further discussion items. So first it did say that entire ordinance, but then it limits it to these items. So I would only discuss these, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items at the meeting, and leave any other discussion to December 11th. Does that make sense?
So are we ready to move on to the next item then? Okay. So Vice Chair, if you want to talk about city parking requirements.
Yes, and I'll give our city clerk a moment to pull up the PowerPoint, and if you pass me the clicker.
Oh, yes.
To set the stage, this is just meant to be a very introductory presentation. We're not making it, there's no specific ask. We're not taking any action on this. We're not asking city staff to take any action or do it. It's really just to kind of get a sense of the council for where do we want to go with this next year. We generally have been reactive rather than proactive, and that when the state passes a new law, we then say, well, okay, what do we need to do to adjust to that new state law? And so the question is, should we try to get ahead of this? Should we look at policies that might be where we don't have to do it, but it would help us long term? Also, to set the stage, just to clarify a few things, we're talking about parking requirements, not parking itself. So if ultimately sometime next year we do decide to reduce parking requirements, that will not immediately change it doesn't change anything existing. It's not retroactive. It also gives developers the option, if they want to build a large parking lot for a new housing development or business, they have that choice. It essentially moves the choice from a requirement to the market rate, where they can decide for themselves what level of parking is appropriate given how many units is it, what neighborhood is it in, what services such as transit are available. It allows them to make the decision that they think is appropriate. Here is a section of our current parking code. If you go to that section of the municipal code, this is actually, I think, 1/3 of the table. It's a the table is practically a page long. I just filtered out the lines that seemed most relevant to us. And so we are very detailed about what type of housing is it? What type of commercial or other service is it? And I think it adds some confusion, especially when we start getting into, well, what if if was a neighborhood business, or it was, let's say, ground floor commercial and then 1 or 2 stories of apartments above it in town center, for instance. So our code is fairly complicated. And so that's part of our question is, do we want to look at this table and do we want to simplify things? And there's a few different options for what we could do. The state passed a parking reform bill last year. And to be clear, it does not directly affect us. It only is for cities of 30,000 or more. We are less than that. But it could provide a template for some of the changes we might do. So this was just my individual research looking at what that Senate bill does. And so in red, these are the changes. So where it would lower the minimums for various either single family housing, multifamily, retail, things like that. I would also note that back into being reactive, there is the transit-oriented development bill that passed earlier this year. I think that goes into effect in 2028 or 2029. I'm not sure which, but that would be one of the bills down the line that would require us to make some changes to housing that's near the BRT line that's going along Bothell Way. So one thing we might choose is, do we want to take some of these recommendations from the state bill? Do we want to implement those? If we look at some of our neighboring cities, Bothell and Shoreline both took action this year. Earlier this summer, they both decided to go all in and get rid of parking restrictions citywide. And their argument was, I'll just let these quotes kind of speak to themselves, but Shoreline Councilmember Scully was talking about affordable housing, reduced hardscape, trees, and it's hard to have all of those things. And it's something that we recognize, that we have a finite amount of land, and setting priorities for what do we want to use that land for? What do we think as a community value is the most important use of that? Bothell Mayor Thompson had a comment when Bothell did their action that parking minimums essentially tax new housing and new businesses. That if they don't want to build a certain number of units, but they're told or number of parking spots, and they're told they have to, that's an additional cost to that developer or that business. And so something we have really emphasized is the importance of affordable housing. And is our current code artificially increasing those costs? Let's have a couple more slides and then I can open up to discussion. So in my mind, those are really the two big things. Is that something I've heard from the tree board is they bemoan how many parking spots there are in town center. And to be clear, this would not change town center retroactively, but they wish there were more trees sprinkled throughout the parking lot. And so having more open space, more green space by having fewer parking spots, reducing housing costs, and also saving staff time long-term, because if we are ahead of the state, then when the state passes another bill next year, or the year after, or the year after that, we don't have to do anything because we've essentially already done it. So really the discussion I'm hoping that we could start tonight is, do we want to work on this? And when I say we, I effectively mean the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has their own parking lot, no pun intended, but their parking lot is very long. And I do think it would be appropriate for us as a council to think about what do we want to offer them some priorities to say, well, in your 2026 work plan, are there some specific housing, parking, zoning things that we really think you should prioritize? And is parking one of those? And then let them do the legwork on what would that look like for Lake Forest Park. And something that if we decide to go down that road, we would also need to think about mitigation. And then how would this impact the community? And what sort of mitigation might there be? Something that Council Member or Deputy Mayor Bodie spearheaded was a parking permit program. And so that is currently on the books for the city. And so might that be something to help mitigate side effects of this? Also, it would give us time to learn from other cities that Shoreline and Bothell adopted. They got rid of their parking about 4 to 6 months ago. It gives us time to learn from them. We could get data from them as to, well, how has this affected housing costs? How has it affected congestion, things like that? So we could learn from that as well. But really the big question is this something we would like to see the Planning Commission look at next year? And so with that, that's the presentation.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So does anybody have any thoughts?
I just want to share with the council that I did print out the parking lot items for what we thought for the Planning Commission when we reviewed their work plan in 2025. So I think looking at what's left on their work plan that they didn't get to, and we'll be getting their 2026 work plan, of course, but this gives you sort of a sense of all the things that we could ask them to do. So we want to be judicious about their time and capacity, and that they just came off a very busy season of comp plan updates for 2 years in a row rather than the usual update once. So just wanted to let you guys know that's why I provided you that document.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. And I notice appropriately named in the parking lot is in fact parking.
Yes, it was a parking lot item, is a parking lot item.
All right. Anyone else with a thought? Councilmember Good.
I kind of have a lot of comments on this. The problem that you're trying to solve is what?
I would say the two problems, one is housing affordability, and the second is what do we prioritize for our land use? Are we prioritizing home space, green space, parking space, et cetera?
Okay, so I actually did a lot on this without it being in front of the council, but because of the unit that was going in next to me. So I actually did a lot of research on it, and we do have our street topography. There's some design constraints. Some of the roads are only 24 feet wide, which would eliminate sight lines. So people may have to choose between walking or parking cars on the same roadway. There's safety and emergency access with vehicles if there's cars parked on both sides of a road, for example. Because once you change a parking or relax a parking, you can't stuff it back in the box. You change it, and that's the way it is. So, oh, thank you. You printed it. So I did this document, and most of it was done before, but when I saw that this was coming up, I thought that I would provide it to you. And another person that I spoke to was our fire marshal, Ryan, and he said that if the city ever does start to talk about parking, that he wants to be part of that discussion. So the planning commission, if they're going to take this up, should engage him, because he has to worry about providing emergency services on our topography, because our topography is not like Kenmore, Bothell, Linwood. We are full of hilly streets. And there's also drainage, environmental impacts to worry about, the pedestrian school zones. And for example, if you reduce the parking at, say, for town center, people are still going to buy a car and they're still going to park. And so you're going to replace people coming to town center from all over the community looking for a parking space, and it could potentially be taken up by someone who's parking their car there, because you can't tell someone they can't have a car. So I talked to Director Hoffman about it, and I think that, he brought up some of the same questions. So I hope you would read this and take it into consideration. I do think that it would involve a lot of broader communication with our residents, because that's who it would impact.
Thank you for that. And I agree with you completely that our fire department, police department, they want to be involved in this conversation. Where I would push back a little would be to say that, in terms of our roads, there are hilly roads in Shoreline and in Bothell. And we would say, there would have to be city rules that say if a road is particularly narrow, you just can't park on that road. And we have those rules in place now, that there are some places you just cannot park on street. And that would not be changing. It would not become I don't believe it would become a free-for-all where we would have people parking and blocking shoulders and blocking sidewalks. But yes, it is something we would have to consider, which is, what would be the consequences? And are there places where it's more likely that the developers would continue to build off-street parking because they know on this cul-de-sac, there is nowhere to park on street. And so I think it's something we'd want to have a conversation with emergency services, with developers to get a sense for what do they think about, where would this go?
And also enforcement. Because if you, to your point, if someone is, because they're going to park, because my road has do not park, right? There's no parking, but they still park. So there would have to be an enforcement mechanism. So that would also require additional labor to enforce that. Because if it's not enforced, it's going to go rampant. Just a side note.
Right. Anyone else? Oh, Councilmember Riddle.
I like the idea of being proactive. I think we see these topics coming down the line from the legislature, and we end up being reactive often because we don't see it. They don't tell us it's coming, basically, in enough time. I really think that it's worth a discussion. I have similar concerns as Councilmember Good, that how do we balance this with our street layouts and street safety? And I've, hearing about one of the challenges that folks have walking to schools is if there's a parked car there, it pushes them into the street because there's no way to get around them the other side because they're in the bushes, and now they've got their kids walking in the street. So how do we pair something like this with appropriate signage, appropriate street paintings, things of that nature to ensure that the safety doesn't get compromised? But there are places in LFP where this could be useful. I think doing a free-for-all would be a little dangerous for us because we would love to be able to trust developers, but sometimes they do make poor decisions.
Yeah, just a level set question with this list provided. Thank you for sharing this. Is this list been something that was, let's see, blessed by the council? Is this something that
With this?
parameters of, the parameters
This is
of what?
my document.
No, the
sorry.
highlighted one.
Oh, the highlighted?
This was when we were reviewing the planning commission's work plan.
Yep.
There was a lot of other things that we were considering having planning commission do, but we were told no, because you have a limited amount of time and you're doing the climate amendment. So not to lose our thoughts. Director Hoffman put this together for us to help hold our thoughts in place.
So just throwing this out, as having been on the planning commission, and Foot has been on the gas for, as you pointed out, for 2 years. I feel like you get really, really good work when people are motivated by something that's really of interest to them. And if this is a list that this group is agreeable with and the planning commission has been agreeable with, I would just throw this out there that maybe, again, with the dynamics changing on the planning commission, maybe it's worth hearing what the planning commission wants to deep dive into, again, because they're dedicating their time to it. That would just be my proposals, that we hear a little bit more from them and maybe what they might want to do on this long, long list.
All right, and including Councilmember Saunders, who's online, I believe. Did anybody else have any other comments? Councilmember Lebo.
I would just offer that, sometimes the way to prioritize your work is you do what you have to do. And there's a lot of has to do already on the planning commission. And so while parking already is something that needs to be addressed by the planning commission, I'm not suggesting that we add to their list. on things that we think might be coming down the pike, but rather we address those that we have, given the limited resources we have with planning commission members and staff, that we focus on those things that we know we already have to do. And trying to guess what the state's going to require us to do in the future, I think is just as good as the lotto ticket I bought, which unfortunately has not panned out well for me.
Right. Thank you, Councilmember. Anybody else?
I might suggest, Deputy Mayor, it might be of interest for the council to hold a joint session with the Planning Commission.
I believe that is very appropriate. Mr. McLean, I appreciate that. So I guess we can schedule that for early next year. Okay, let's do that. All right, yeah, so I appreciate your comments, and my thoughts on it are just simply, I love the idea of being proactive. That's, so rare. I also understand Councilmember Leo's point that we don't want to basically tax our planning commission, so definitely talking to them is a key point there, and that'll be part of our joint session. And then finally, my thought is that we need to actually also ask Director Hoffman, what would really the impact of this be if we were to accept the state, they're not mandated, but just to say state requirements, would that suddenly lead to a huge influx of housing here? Would this suddenly basically change the shape of the community? My gut feeling is, oh, you're online. Great. Hi. So yeah, so I'll ask you directly then, Director Hoffman, if we were to accept these parking changes as suggested by the state, and their suggestions now, not mandates, would you expect there to be a flood of building permits applied for in the city?
I don't, and thank you for the question. And the reason being is that critical areas, trees, topography, infrastructure, the fact that the city is primarily single or low density residential, there's not going to be a large influx. That's often why we're not included in future legislation. Regionally, we're small, but it will have impacts that will need analysis. I don't have an opinion on any of it. I haven't studied it, and it will have local impacts. So a process would have to include looking into those. And I just had one clarifying question. I know we've had a variety of work plans. Most recently, we had a July parking lot that was shared with Planning Commission in November. So I'm not sure which version you have, but it keeps growing. If the second page has a yellow highlight and it's 3 pages, that's the most current.
That's the one I found.
Not this one though, right?
The second page has the yellow highlight.
Oh.
This is the first page.
Gotcha.
Oh.
And
I think we do have the most up-to-date one. Yeah.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
to me, that does feel like an argument for having that joint meeting with the Planning Commission, because the parking lot does keep growing. And so I think at some point we do need to reset expectations and say, well, the parking lot has ballooned. What do we need to like what must be done? And with the remaining bandwidth, what are our top priority nice to haves that we want the Planning Commission to look at? So I would very much support a holistic view of the Planning Commission and what they're planning to do for 2026.
And a little response to that, we brought this as an agenda item last week at the November special meeting. This will be at the December 9th Planning Commission, and I'm tasked with, I don't have the exact wording from my notes, but to begin drafting a very draft 2026 work plan that starts to address the must-haves and starts considering review cycles at ecology, for instance, for the shoreline management plan, the critical areas ordinance. So when I return from the holiday this week, I'll be producing that draft. It'll be based on what you have in the document there with the highlight, but it begins to prioritize their structure so that the commission has an idea of mandatory versus voluntary. And then the plan was to finalize that in January, bring it to City Council on your schedule, either late January or February, but not stop working on item 3, which is development code, frontage, minimums, and so forth. Yeah, thank you.
All right, appreciate that, Director Hoffman. So, Vice Chair, would you be amenable to discussing with administration as well as the Planning Commission date on which they could come and speak to us, presumably before we accept the work plan? So,
Yeah, I think it would be good for us to have that conversation to pin down which meeting date we do.
all right, thank you. I appreciate that. All right, anybody have any further comments on this topic? All right, seeing none, I know that this is the end of our agenda, but I have a good of the order. I'll take the heat for it if that violates something, but I think Councilmember Lebo, you wanted to state something?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was at the indulgence of the council. May we reopen public comment, as I will be a public member soon. Yeah. Yes.
I think you guys decided you would have additional public comment later anyway, so you could. Can I suggest that you do it from the podium?
Absolutely. All right, so reopening public comment. Thank you, Councilmember Lebo. Actually, I should say, Mr. Lebo. Okay.
Thank you, Council, Deputy Mayor. I would like to recognize and thank Ashton McCartney as she concludes her service as the interim council member. Ashton stepped into this role with professionalism, humility, and genuine commitment to serving our community. Interim appointments are not easy. There is a steep learning curve, complicated issues to navigate, and the responsibility of representing residents right from day one. Ashton rose to the occasion with clarity, grace, and a steady focus on doing what's best for Lake Forest Park. She approached every meeting prepared, every discussion with thoughtfulness, and every decision with integrity. Her voice on this council has been constructive, balanced, and deeply valued. Ashton also brought a willingness to listen to staff, to colleagues, and to members of the public, which is one of the truest markers of an effective public leadership. Ashton, thank you for stepping forward when the city needed you, for contributing your time and talent, and for embodying the spirit of service that strengthens this community. Thank you for your work, and I wish you, and I'm sure others, for the very best, that all you may come forward next for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thought you were going to talk about the budget.
And to the community, I don't think it's any secret, but on December 11th at the work session, we're going to steal a little bit of the time to honor both Councilmember McCartney and Councilmember Lebo's service to the city. So everybody's invited.
Thank you.
All right, with that, since the special meeting allows no further agenda, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, council.